very excited, and I'm going to stall slightly while the AV gets set up. I'm very excited to introduce our next talk, which will be John Odum, who is a friend of the village, a veteran speaker, and one of a small crew of election officials who early on understood the value of the work being done in the voting village and wants to engage with and reach out to our community to understand elections. And he's going to be talking about low-skill, high-impact attacks on mobile voting, remote voting systems. So I'm not going to go into all of the details of John's impressive bio, but I will say he is one of us, which is the highest praise I know.
Oops, I'm back here. Hey, everybody.
And you are still not
I'm still not up there?
No. Let me see if the projector is it on?
I can't get in on the... I must be up there. I'm in presentation mode.
Gee, does anyone know anything about AV? No, don't.
We got it?
Yeah, it'll find you in a second.
All right.
It just has to
Or maybe it
get
won't.
back to the...
You know, I'm not hooked up to anything. That's the problem.
There's
There.
the problem.
All right. Let's try.
This is where we cut to the slide with technical difficulties. Here we go.
All right.
All right.
Okay, great. Thanks, folks. As you said, my name is John Odum. I am a local election administrator, elected city clerk in Montpelier, Vermont, where my jurisdiction is about 6,000 voters, so I get to do everything. I used to play at hacking. I keep my certified ethical hacker certification because boy, does it impress the rubes. It doesn't really mean much, though. I'm a total Metasploit baby at this point. But I'm here to talk to you about ways. But basically, my thesis is that any large-scale implementation of internet voting would never be trusted in this country. You will never have a high-confidence election. That's what I'm talking about. And I'm going to spend a lot of time with confidence hacks, with vote suppression. Uokava voting is one thing, but full scale is nuts. It ain't going to happen, and in a way that would ever be confidence. Now, this is a warning, not a how-to. I swear. Why is confidence important? It's fundamental. Ask people you know. It's common sense. This makes the point that I'm talking about right here. On a survey done in 2024, votes cast over the internet had 36% confidence. So internet voting begins with a confidence problem before an attacker ever acts. How many people have even brought up the topic? Every time I bring up the topic with somebody, they say, oh, that sounds like a bad idea. That's where you go to first. And it's easy to keep people there. My point here is that cheap attacks deserve more attention because public confidence is part of election security. Human behavior is easier to influence than software, and security discussions also should include attacks that don't alter ballots, that you can exploit transparency to destroy confidence. Now, let me just say real quick, no, I'm not going to have enough time. I'm going to skip that in case there's a question about it. Never mind. So a Gallup poll. Here's the question. This was pretty recent. How confident are you that the votes in this year's, or this is back from 2024, accurately cast and counted? Now, none of you are going to be surprised to see that the results are terrible. Again, we're already in a confidence problem. So getting people back to it is never going to be an issue. First thing I want to talk about, and I'm trying to rush through this because I have a million things I'd love to talk about, but one cheap hack that I would do as a script kiddie, I would do everything I could to get into defacement. This happens, and it happens to local websites at the county level. And the thing about our decentralized system is it's our strength, right? It's not like Estonia, one system. You can go boom, right in there. We're an ecosystem. There's a million different ways we do elections in a million different jurisdictions. That also creates a vulnerability, though, because you can target jurisdictions, counties that don't do a good job with this, and you affect one stone in that wall, and there goes confidence. There it gets covered in the media, and a great way to do this would be defacement in situations where the online voting is browser-based, is through the web. Now, here are some known or affected counties during a hack in 2019 in Kansas. There were several. You can see up there the altered sites displayed attacker-authored informations like hacked by Muslim, things like this. But you can create a cascading effect that ruins psychological effect. This is all psyops, is that what I'm talking about here. You synthesize that with social media. Here's a couple more examples of defacement of governmental websites that demonstrate that public-facing government websites can be successfully modified. Now consider the strategic applications for online voting. This is where people are going to vote, is their state or county website. It becomes like the old robocalls on steroids. Here's a scenario for you. Here's something I would do. Speaking of exploiting transparency, voter history information to varying degrees in various states is available as public information. You can go in a lot of cases, every day and find out who early voted that day. So imagine going and collecting some of that information. Collecting information, you can also in some cases collect information on how they voted, by mail or not. This is public information in a lot of jurisdictions. Imagine going and getting some of that information, slapping it up on the county website, and saying you've been hacked. You know, the press calls the person, says, hey, did you actually vote early? Yes, I did. They must have got me. I mean, this is just the kind of creative thinking you could do accessing a lot of the information that we have with a cheap hack. Now, website hijacks, there's a lot of ways to do it. Some of them are truly cheap. Some of them take very little skill. You know, stolen CMS passwords, phishing. A lot of this comes down to phishing. Phishing is what I'm always talking about. Exploiting an unpatched vulnerability in a WordPress site, something like this, that's low, moderate skill. Cost is low. We're not spending a lot of money when we do this. Buying access from an initial access broker is a little higher. The cost is going to vary, as compared to compromising the hosting provider, which is, that's the high skill. But the other stuff, it's doable. This doesn't take a advanced persistent threat or a state-based actor to just get in there if internet voting is part of your voting scheme and mess with people's heads. Now, another thing we can do is direct users to malicious apps. Again, phishing. It's not necessarily a lot of work to build a good malicious app. By which I mean, click on this link. Here's your voting application, in my state, Vermont voting application. You go, you pick it up, you click on it. It doesn't take a lot to do that necessarily. Malware doesn't have to be sophisticated to cause problems, quite the opposite. The trick is getting it onto the user endpoint device, and as we all know, that's doable, especially if the internet-enabled election is app-driven, for example, over phones. That way the attacker doesn't have to hack the voting server, they can hack the voter. Malicious mobile apps. Again, the approximate skills for building a malicious app, a simple one, is low to moderate. The cost is very low. To clone or repackage a legitimate looking app with malicious functionality, moderate skill, low cost. Distribute it directly on your own official app store, which is perfectly good if you're phishing, very low cost. Very low if you know how to fish, very, very low skill. Now, submitting it to an official app store, that's a different story. But my point is that you can be a low-grade hacker and you don't really have to. Now, directing users to malicious browser extensions, same story, same thing. If voting happens in a browser, that browser is part of the voting system, and a malicious browser extension with permission to read and modify web pages may already be sitting between the voter and legitimate election website. Now we can change votes, okay? Now we can have something trigger when you go to the legitimate site, and you could press the wrong button. So now we get a little scarier. We're moving a little out of just the PSYOPs range to some stuff that can really matter. Malicious browser extensions. Again, to create a basic extension capable of reading or modifying web page content. Low to moderate skill. Cost very low. To distribute it directly and persuade users to install it. I put approximate skill moderate, and I don't think that's right. I think it's, again, if you know how to fish, that's not a big deal. You can get all kinds of assistance in doing that. If I'm a script kiddie like I am, I use the phishing module in Metasploit, which I'm also a Metasploit baby. That's why I refer to it again. Going through an official extension store, getting a little bit harder. You could clone and impersonate a useful, legitimate extension. Again, approximate skill, moderate, cost low. These are all things, and as I say, now we've moved out of the hacking confidence into actually hacking the election. Okay, we're not doing anything with the cryptography here. I'm not hacking the actual tabulator site. I'm just messing with people's heads, and in some cases messing with their votes. And we have to remember that you don't have to change votes to throw an election one way or the other. All you have to do is stop them from getting cast. And again, this turns our greatest asset, that decentralization, into a vulnerability. Now, real quick, let's talk about denial of service attacks. Again, there isn't a single architecture. You've got a lot of pieces here. You've got county-level jurisdictions. You've got state-level jurisdictions. They work in various capacities. You've got stressors you can find on the dark web easily enough. Now, I'm not saying that you're going to get enough of a botnet for rent to take out one of these places. For example, Vermont, we've got everything on AWS. You're not going to crash that. But as I say, there's a lot of different pieces to this. You could crash, and it does happen that DOS attacks crash county-level systems, right? Of course it happens. Here's some examples. Now, when you do that, you get press, okay? One site goes down, an easy site, say, one county in Tennessee or in Mississippi here goes down. That gets on the news, and it brings into question for folks the entire election. Well, did everything get counted? Maybe it didn't. Maybe it didn't go this way. Was my jurisdiction hacked and I don't even know about it? Again, it's a PSYOP that anybody can, that most hackers or decent hackers can pull off if they really want to. Hinds County, Mississippi. I only have the KillNet up there just as sort of proof of concept, because that was obviously a bigger deal. Now, internet voting by phone. This is where it gets scary. Now, this is some stuff I talked about when I talked about something else last year, but it's more applicable now. And this gets my particular attention. I already testified against this in the Vermont legislature just this last session. If you want to see where the front lines of Bradley Tusk's vote by phone initiative is going to be next year, it's Vermont. He has hired the biggest lobbying firm in the state. They're the biggest contributors to Democratic candidates in the state. He's brought down high-end lobbyists from Washington to help. He's already started working local administrators at my level to get them on board. He's got on board the person who is likely to be our next Senate President pro tem next time. And there is an all-out push from him, no holds barred, to get a vote by phone option for local jurisdictions in Vermont. So this is why I freak out about this one. This is in my backyard. So this is what I did, okay? And I just took New Hampshire as an example. New Hampshire has, well, let me just go forward and I'll come back. No, wait a minute, that's not it. Come back. Where'd you go? All right. Well, anyways, New Hampshire has, as I recall, about 1.3 million registered voters, roughly 1.2 million. I want to get that back because I'm skipping around. Yeah, actually 1.2 million. I found a commercial mobile phone list, just picking up the phone and calling an information vendor. And he gave me about 130,000 mobile numbers in New Hampshire. That's a decent amount. So now I did some math, right? Let's take out 30%, which seemed a little arbitrary on my part, but seemed reasonable to take those off as not registered to vote on that list. And I also factored in voter turnout into the list, and I came up with a targetable percentage. Now, a smishing click-through rate, if I wanted to smish these folks and point them the wrong direction, is on the high end of guesses, 14.5%. Now, I have 90,000 reachable voters from the numbers I got. 14.5 at 90,000 gives me 13,000 votes who I potentially have deceived, or 1.14% of the electorate. Now, the 2016 U.S. Senate vote in New Hampshire was decided by just 1,017 votes, or 0.14% of the electorate. So you don't have to change votes if you misdirect people. This doesn't even get into the idea that they're going to get, there's identity theft possibilities from being redirected. All you have to do is keep people from voting, and it can be enough to throw an election. Now, you might ask, I'm not throwing it one way or the other. I don't know if I threw it. I don't know what happened. I'll never know. Well, that's not entirely true either, because you can do demographic micro-targeting on these lists you get. You can say it's going to be a smaller percentage, but you could say, give me the mobile phone votings with demographic matches on communities of color. For example, historically marginalized communities of any type you can think of, and then you are targeting for a specific effect, because you can look at the voting trends from that particular group. Maybe the group tends to vote overwhelmingly Democratic. Well, target your campaign to them. It's scary stuff. The phone stuff scares me more than anything. We've moved beyond psyops here and confidence hacks to actually affecting an election. So, oh man, I managed to fly through that. I could have taken more time. Wow. Jeez. So anyways, my summary here is that internet voting discussions often focus on sophisticated attacks intended to alter votes. But a more immediate threat, in my opinion, comes from inexpensive attacks that exploit voter confidence or their lack of sophistication, rather than election integrity in the sense that we usually discuss it. Public-facing election websites, transparency tools, social media, mobile phones, all create opportunities for moderately skilled adversaries to undermine trust, or in some cases suppress turnout without ever compromising an actual voting system. Historical examples demonstrate that these vectors already exist. The challenge is recognizing and explaining that voter confidence itself is a target. So I'm speaking really low grade, folks, here, but that's my point. Basic stuff can mess up your election, and it will. Now, I'm going to zip back to one of my notes here, so I'm going to go back and slide a little, since I've got the time, something I skipped. If I can find it. Just because I think it's worth mentioning. Estonia is going to come up potentially in anybody's conversation about this kind of thing. Estonia is very different structurally and much, much smaller. Looking at it, it's closer to New Hampshire. The internet voting concept is largely normalized, and I'm talking about creating a situation here where it would never be normalized, which I think is the truth. The national concept of the concept of a national voter ID is also normalized. So psyops are a different is a different animal at a place like Estonia than is really suited for this conversation. That's another entire discussion. But there is a reason for the proliferation of disinformation, specifically in the US, and that's that it works here. And this is akin to disinformation attacks. Okay. As a technological monoculture, Estonia it's been demonstrated, dangerously susceptible, as was shown in 2014. But our system, again, what we have isn't so much an election system as an election ecosystem. And that creates opportunities like this to mess with and to change our greatest strength, which is our decentralization, into a weakness. So that's all I got. Just a flyby. I don't know if anybody's got any questions. Pretty straightforward. I'd be shocked if there were any questions. Oh, there's one.
Thank you for the talk. Really appreciate sharing the information. I just wondered to what degree some of these attacks can be mitigated, perhaps, and I'm not sure to what degree, say this is true, a lawmaker may not be informed about the risks or consequences of effective solutions. Any thoughts or opinions on that topic?
On mitigate, what was the last part?
Some of these attacks could be better mitigated if our lawmakers had better information to, like the phishing, the vote by phone example. It's kind of a good idea as implemented in Vermont. But perhaps lawmakers do better or otherwise have better information about it, then they can make better decisions.
Well, that's the hope, right? You get the information to them so none of this ever actually happens. Unfortunately, I think we're on a trajectory here. You asked me about the UOCAVA voting, for example. I don't think there's probably not. It's a bad idea to have internet voting for UOCAVA. It's a bad idea to have internet voting anywhere. The problem is the slippery slope argument. Sauce for the goose, Mr. Savick, if you've seen that movie. If it's okay on one side, it's going to be okay on the other. That slippery slope is going to happen. So educating legislators is obviously critical, but it's going to be information campaigns when this actually happens that are going to counter it among the voters. And I don't think you could have a good enough education campaign to stop this from happening. I think especially, we all know how hard it is to teach unsophisticated users proper hygiene. They are vulnerable, we see it all the time, and they're going to stay vulnerable. So, nope.
So what's the alternative for UOCAVA voters who don't have mail return as a viable option where they live?
Well, I mean, that's a really good question. That's an ongoing conversation that I have with folks. You don't want the cure to be worse than the disease is the problem. And this particular cure could be catastrophic in a lot of ways. We could throw elections with it. I think that, for one thing, this should all be postage provided. I don't think, I mean, that'd be a lot of money, but I think anything that goes out to a UOCAVA voter, they should be able to just drop in the mail and send it back. But there is no good solution right now. That's why it gets talked about so much. Same with the disabled community. This has huge appeal, and I'm kind of torn. I'm an election administrator, right? Part of me thinks this is the greatest thing since sliced bread. Why can't we have it? It solves these problems. And then the other me is like, we just can't go there, and that's just a hard stop. I mean, that's not an adequate answer, but I think it's the right one. You were up first.
So you haven't talked about physical attacks on the cell phone system. It strikes me that cell towers are not really well secured. Many of them are easily accessible and not very well looked at. Mm-hmm. So it wouldn't be hard to just walk up to a cell tower and cut cables during the election period. And I can imagine doing that in neighborhoods where there are people voting for the party I don't vote. I don't think I would ever do it. It's a serious threat, I think.
Yeah, I mean, actually, I thought you were going to talk about actually hacking a cell tower, which is a whole level, another degree of... Just exactly. Well, I mean, they fix those things, but sure, you could go in with some scissors. Why not? There was another one here, and then I think I'm probably out of time. Oh yeah.
UOCAVA, is it actually internet voting or is just the ballot marking?
Well, my understanding is that most of the is remote. Is ballot marking, not live, but you print out the ballot, or you print it out and then you send it in.
Well, but you send it in by fax frequently.
You can send it in by fax. We don't do that in Vermont. I think there may be jurisdictions where you can send it in by email, but don't quote me on that. So yeah, we're talking low-level stuff, but it's more is coming, I guess is my point, and it scares the bejesus out of me.
A note of the Jesus being scared out of him. Join me in thanking God.